Welcome back to the Pause Run Play podcast. My name is Casey, and we got the standard crew here with us tonight. We got Josh. What's up, man?
What's up, guys?
We got Vince,
Hello, hello, hello.
and we got me, Casey, again. just want to give myself a second shout out. But anyhow, we're back. We're here to talk movies again, so thank you for joining us. And we're here to talk a very special movie tonight. What are we talking, Vince?
Josh should be the one to announce this one. He's kind of likes it, I think.
He is the man. He knows his stuff with this one.
Just a little bit. I've just only been waiting for this movie to be released. Number one, since they announced they were going to be doing it, yeah. But I have been literally ready for this movie to come out since March of last year because it was basically about to come out. All of the trailers were happening. It was ready to go. It had a release date, I think, for the end of March 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And so now, finally, a year and 2 months later, we got A Quiet Place Part 2. Which I know I just made that so dramatic, but anyone who clicked on this, can probably read it from the title. But anyway, surprise! A Quiet Place, Waterworld.
Did your guys' showings also have the intro with John Krasinski, where he's just thank you guys so much for your patience.
Yes.
The movie experience is important. Glad you guys are here. I will support it.
Uh-huh.
I thought that was really classy. I actually liked that. I was respectful. I just really like John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. I think they're just legitimately good people.
Yeah.
And can't do anything wrong.
I mean, let's be real. Besides Tenet kind of last year, this is the first real movie that it's been let's go to the freaking movie theater
Godzilla.
and watch this. No, HBO.
really.
That one was on HBO
Oh,
Max
you're right,
though
it
too.
was, yeah.
So there was definitely still a lot of people who March came, people went to the theaters and saw Godzilla versus Kong because not everyone has HBO Max, right? But at least I feel for me, because it was the first movie I saw since Tenet last year. So it was almost an entire year that it's been since I'd been to the movie theater. This is the first movie where it wasn't even just because I was forced. If this movie were at home, if it were at home for free, that'd be a different story. But it was pay to watch it at home or pay to watch it at the theater. This is one where I'd be I will pay to go to the theater to watch this movie, And I feel he was talking about that, but also hey, thanks for, coming to my movie. Trying to be hey, thanks guys.
Yeah.
You're paying my salary.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with that. Because I saw the kind of the promo marketing they did the very first night it came out, right? He was running around to different theaters and being thank you for
that's
coming
cool.
to a
Mhm.
screening, and he went all across the country, I think, to
Yeah, he
a
did.
variety of theaters,
That's awesome.
and just did the cool John Krasinski thing and welcomed people back to theaters. And I think the thing is for me is I feel that gives him more of a human feature, that he's more like you and I, and he's grateful that not that he's a movie star and has millions and millions of dollars and doesn't give a crap about me after he's done acting. He cashed his paycheck and he doesn't care now.
Yeah.
And I thought that was good. Honestly, I was thank you, John. It's thanks, Jim. That's I think that's
Thank
actually
you,
how he
John.
said it.
I felt his thanking you in the theater felt so much more sincere and real than that whole Fast and the Furious trailer.
Yeah.
There's some movie, I don't remember which one it is, where if you go, there's going to be I don't even know. It was a 5 or 6 minute extended cut of Fast 9 in the previews of this movie. And I don't even remember which one it was, but I was what the heck? What if I want to go to that movie, but I don't care to see Fast 9?
Yeah, I guess you can go late.
Just have to try to time it right so I get there before the start of the movie. But that's always my problem, because sometimes I'll go to a movie theater and there's 10 minutes of ads at the beginning.
Mhm.
But this time I went down to the movie theater right here by my parents' house, because it's down here on a Sunday, and I went and I was late, and I was okay, whatever, I was late, it's fine. I was 5 minutes late, and there was still another 15 to 20 minutes of previews before the movie. And I was do I just need to plan on a full half hour after the movie comes? Holy cow.
Megaplex, is that where you went?
Yeah.
Yeah, Megaplex is getting bad with the amount of previews they have before.
Cinemark is just as guilty at this point. The thing
they
is,
make money somehow.
this
I
is my
guess.
theory, is that they just didn't make any money, and they're just like, we have to run ads. We have to run
Like, we
ads.
gotta
pretty
run
much.
some extra
But
ones.
I mean, the Megaplex is like sponsored by some plumbing company now.
Well, they're sponsored. Like the IMAX screen is sponsored by it, but I mean, like,
Oh, is it just the IMAX?
they're sponsored / owned ? By Larry H. Miller dealerships.
Larry H.
right?
Miller
Yeah.
Or they
owns
just
the Larry
sponsor?
H. Miller Corporation owns
They
the
own
Megaplex.
Yeah, let's see.
And then the plumber is sponsoring the IMAX?
They'd sponsor like the IMAX screen.
Oh,
So
okay.
like technically, like you'll see like their name on the outside by
Yeah.
the IMAX thing, and then I think they get like some extra ad when you go and see it in IMAX or something.
Well, I almost never go, like I almost always go to the IMAX showing when I go to the theater.
Right.
I used to. So I'd always see that freaking plumber commercial
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
The first time I ever saw it was when you and I went and saw the Mission Impossible with Henry Cavill and his mustache.
When he when he loads his biceps.
Yeah.
It's one of the best moments in movie trailers ever.
I don't know.
Oh,
That's
man.
it's debatable for me right there. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you know how we've talked about the like evolution of theaters, right? I think you're gonna see, for a while at least, longer trailer timelines and stuff like that because it's
Yeah,
how they can
that's
make more
true.
money. But I also think that you're just gonna see more local businesses popping in as sponsors because they need the support of local businesses to stay afloat. And what's a better place than to find a captive audience than sitting in a theater and being like, man, the plumbing in my house sucks. I don't know.
I had a plumber in my house today, but that's a different story. We can get into that.
Oh, man. Well, let's get into what we've been watching lately. It's been a minute. I'm going to lead on this one because I'm really excited to talk about what I've been watching.
Do it.
So I started watching Loki. I'm only
Heck
halfway
yeah.
through the first episode. Please don't judge me. I mean, I started
Why
it
did
like,
you quit?
I had to go finish doing what I'm doing right now, and it's just I just didn't have time, and it was sad.
I was enthralled. Is that the right word?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed my time watching it. It was fun, and like it's the world building that they do within the first 15 minutes. Amazing.
I guess
So-
I know what I'm doing tonight after the podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna
but-
finish it,
watch
so
it.
maybe we should just watch it. I don't know, but also like
So I popped it on at like 10:30 last night, and I was like, please don't be an hour-long show, because I didn't want to stay up late.
Mhm.
51 minutes is the runtime, plus credits, so probably 45 minutes.
It's
something like
Disney. It's probably like 40.
that. Yeah, for real. But I was just captivated through the entire thing. I loved every single minute of that first episode. I love, like you said, the world building. It's so focused on the character and not like the action sequences and stuff. You just really, by the end of it, have a better understanding of who Loki is, and I loved it.
And if
it's
there's
weird,
a
but it's
character
just-
that you want to get to know in the MCU, let's be real, it's pretty much Loki. Like, there might be a couple other contenders, but as far as like good characters that still exist, especially like mysterious ones, because I mean, there's obviously a lot of people, like there's Captain America, Iron Man, all these people who have their full-fledged out movies, but I like that we're kind of getting into some of these other people who have gained like love and fan and cult followings. We're getting, you know, the Loki story that's going on right now. We're getting
and it's-
the Black Widow backstory here soon. So I don't know.
all these characters that we've had for so long and not
True.
had anything to do with them.
Well, think about it. It took the Mandalorian, aka like the Boba Fett culture type thing, like 40 years before they got one. So I mean, at least Disney's doing it right, and so we can't complain too much about that. In my mind, however, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm ready for a good Loki series. I think it's gonna be great.
I think it will too.
So I'm pumped. I'm glad that you were enthralled by it, to say the least. And then we watched, obviously, A Quiet Place Part 2, but then we also went back to the movies a second time, and this is what I'm so hyped about. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It.
Yes.
And
Did
let me
see
tell
it too,
you
Vince?
what, it
No, I
was
haven't.
great. I loved it. And this is the two, Patrick Wilson and, oh gosh, what's her name? Farmina, I don't know. The Norman Bates' mom in Bates Motel, essentially. But she's great. They do so good as Ed and Lorraine. Like, I love them. So Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
what I've been watching lately.
I don't think. I mean, I guess you could count Quiet Place 2 as a horror movie, but I don't think I've watched a horror movie in over a year now. And it used to be like one of my favorite genres.
Wait,
and
over a year? So like even when spooky season last year rolled around,
I
you
don't think I
weren't.
watched a single scary movie
Holy
that season.
cow!
Yeah.
What in the world?
It's because Vince was too busy flying his cool drone, and that was what he was doing, which we should talk about sometime, but not right now.
Yeah, I loved. Just to go off of you, I also watched The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It. I just watched it at home on HBO Max, but I also thought it was really good. I already kind of mentioned this to you, but I was like, the ending kind of like a lot of them can be like a little cheesy, but like what Conjuring movie isn't? And it was fun, and it had like good scares while not being just like over the top, like, hey, we're gonna jump scare them every 30 seconds, and this is gonna be our movie, like without even giving a second thought to the story. The story was good, the acting was great, like the suspense that it put you in. Overall, I liked it.
I think just like for frame of reference, I saw this interesting thing, and I think it's good to share. Someone accurately described what I think about this is because it's not like a scary movie. Actually, it's not based around like the horror of it. It's based around the love story that is Ed and Lorraine. Like that's like the undertone of it. Like is their connection and how they're bonded and like how they work better together, which I think is pretty cool. Like the stories that go with it, yeah, cheesy. Like I would love to dig into the Vatican's archives, but I'm not the guy from the Da Vinci Code. I'm not gonna have access to them anytime soon. And Robert Langdon or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy the Conjuring universe despite no matter how cheesy it may be. I love it. I just feel personally attacked, Josh. That's all. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I wasn't saying that the whole. I'm just saying like.
No,
some
no,
parts
I'm
of it
being
felt cheesy,
sarcastic.
but I still love it.
I promise I'm being sarcastic. No.
All right. Well, since I mentioned that one, I guess I'll keep going. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't been watching a ton of new stuff lately. I've been struggling to get into a new TV show. Like I'll start a show and just be like, I don't know, like if I want to watch this, even though like it's like shows that I know will be good. Like I'm not gonna say I know they'll be great, but like what was it? I started like Peaky Blinders the other day, and like halfway through the first episode, I was just like, I'm just not feeling this right now. Like, and I don't doubt that this show is amazing, and I've had it on my list on Netflix for forever, but I'm like, I'm just not feeling it right now, so I'll just stop. And I've done that with like 3 or 4 different shows. So there's been that. I watched The Conjuring. Obviously, Quiet Place Part 2. I'm pretty sure I've watched something else recently that I can't remember. I did watch Tenet again now that it's on HBO Max, which was pretty cool.
Was it good watching it from home? Like, how was your experience
It
with
was
that?
good still. Like, anything, I guess, is better than Vince's drive-in movie experience that he had with Tenet. But, like, obviously it wasn't like a movie theater, but I thought it was still great, especially already knowing a lot of stuff. So Tenet is definitely, like, we've already established, not Christopher Nolan's greatest, but definitely still, it's a good movie. So I like Tenet. I've just been pretty recently, I've just been kind of getting hyped for stuff that is to come, I guess. So I already kind of talked to Vince about this. I watched like the new Battlefield trailer for video games, not movies, right? And I'm excited for that. There's a lot of stuff coming out about the new like Call of Duty that's releasing at the end of the year and like the new season that's coming. I've been getting hyped for that. Money Heist, one of my favorite Netflix shows that I've told you guys about. They put out a trailer announcing their final like season is split into 2 parts that'll be released in September and December of this year. I'm hyped for that. Netflix is also putting out stuff about Stranger Things season 4. They haven't put a release date or anything, but they're just like releasing more of the cast and stuff that's happening. So I don't know. I haven't been watching as much stuff lately because I've been working or doing other stuff, but I've just been getting kind of hyped. Like there's a lot of good stuff that's coming. Like that's just the stuff that was on the top of my mind. There's a lot of good movies coming as well. I know I just said video games and TV shows and not a single movie, but obviously Black Widow is coming up, and it's a lot of stuff. So
I'm way excited, and I hope that for Black Widow, I just want to be just like the Red Star. Like he's my new hero already. The guy who's what's his name?
David Harbour.
David Harbour. He's my new hero. I want him to be in everything. I just had to say that. But yeah, Vince, what have you been watching?
I'm kind of the same as you, Josh. I was just looking at my letterbox tab to see what I've watched over the past month. and there's 4 movies on here. Also, I jumped back to October to see what spooky movies I watched in October to see if I was wrong, and I actually did watch a scary movie. No, my spooky season movies were Hubie Halloween and The Babysitter Killer Queen. 2 of the worst movies I've seen.
I don't know the
in a
Babysitter
long
one,
time.
but yeah, dude, Hubie Halloween, holy cow.
Yeah, I watched 4 movies in the last month. But I have been watching a lot of TV shows. I'm in season 2 of Westworld. I'm finally getting around to it.
Nice.
And then a lot of the shows I've been watching are kind of week-to-week shows. Like I've been watching Mythic Quest on Apple TV, week to week-ish. I've been watching a show called Hacks on HBO, which is really, really good. I'm absolutely loving it. The season finale comes out tomorrow, I think, actually. It's about 2 comedians, female comedians. One of them is an older lady who has a show on the Strip in Vegas and has been doing stand-up for like her entire life, and she's like about to lose her show on the Strip, and she refuses to kind of let go. And then the other comedian is a younger comedian who tweeted something and got canceled, and so she can't find a job in the industry, so she's forced to go and write jokes for this older comedian. And they like butt heads, and it's really good. I really like it.
What was that one called again?
It's called Hacks.
Hacks.
Hacks, like they're hacks.
It says on HBO.
It's on HBO. I've really enjoyed it.
Sweet.
It's really good. I watched Mayor of Easttown on HBO. It's a detective murder mystery story. Really, really good. Like really well done TV, and a really good mystery that. I didn't see the ending coming, so I recommend that one highly as well. And then the only movie that I've watched this entire month was Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead.
I watched that one too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It was bad. It was real bad.
It was fine.
I didn't like it.
I was going into it with like the lowest of low expectations from what I had seen for like reviews and stuff. And so like I was like, this is like a fine like I don't know, zombie, like, heist. Like, because the thing is, that sounds like it could be so cool. You know, like a zombie heist. Like, that sounds dope. This movie just was not. And
in classic Zack Snyder, like, the heist was, like, maybe 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, they had a setup for the heist, and then they broke into a safe at 3/4 of the way through, and the rest of it was just, like, didn't have anything to... I mean, the whole premise is set around going in and taking stuff out of a safe. But they didn't really have to, like, do any heisting until they were in the thing for a minute.
And I just, like, my pet peeve right now with Zack Snyder is he shows me stuff that could be cool, but, like, doesn't actually give it to you either because he's not directing the DC universe anymore or, like, he's trying to get more Army of the Dead movies. Like, did you see, like, all, like, the Easter eggs that were going on with, like, the robot zombies and all this stuff, like, throughout?
Aliens,
and I'm like, okay, what, like, is this? Like, why are you, like, hinting at this stuff but not actually, like, using it? Because I was expecting to have something go on later, like, oh, those are actually, like, fake zombies controlled by the government. They're, like, spying in there or doing, like... I was expecting to be part of the movie, and then it just wasn't. And I was like, what was all this garbage? Like... I don't know. So like I said, I thought it was like a fun, cool, like Dave Bautista did his thing. I like him. Like I thought it was fine, but like I also went into it with zero expectations.
I went into it with high hopes.
You love Snyder.
Because I like Snyder. I like his style a lot. So I was like, okay, this is Snyder Unleashed, you know? Because he went to Netflix, he wrote this, he directed it, he shot it. I did not like the way he shot the movie. There's so much depth of field in it that it's almost impossible to see what's going on except for like very specific people. Like, did you notice that at all? Kind of shot it the same way that Joker scene at the end of Justice League is shot. Just that I looked it up. The lens he like brags about the lens he uses because it can get such like the focus in so sharp and everything behind it just gets blurred out and it can look really cool. Like I actually liked how the Joker scene looked when it was kind of going in and out of focus. But in this one, it's like there would be scenes where in a normal movie, you'd have the person talking up front and you'd be able to tell who the people are behind him. In this one, the depth of field would be so sharp that as soon as it would get like to the ear of the person talking, that it would start to go blurry, and then everything behind it you just couldn't tell. Go back and like look and pay attention. It just
You're assuming I'm going to
drove me
watch this
bonkers.
movie again.
Didn't they have to digitally edit one of the like the people in because
yeah,
someone got canceled or something? I don't
Yeah.
know.
yep. And that actually looked decent.
Really?
Like, I was pretty impressed.
I
with
didn't
how
even know that
went.
happened. So
I'm
I guess
gonna
The
be super.
helicopter pilot. She was all done on a green screen. Tig Nahara, I think. her
I
name
like
is.
her. I didn't
Yeah.
know she was. That's cool.
She wasn't. She didn't do a single scene with another actor.
That
It
is
was
pretty
all green
crazy. I
scene
had
and stuck in.
no clue.
Yeah.
Huh.
So there's like things that like in classic Snyder fashion, there's moments and there's things like I loved the intro to the movie, the intro credits. He does those so well. Like the Batman v Superman where it's Martha and Thomas Wayne's death and it's like slow motion, artsy and cool, and you have like the director's name and the writers coming up, and it tells this whole story within the first like 5 minutes in a really artsy way.
Yeah.
And then Watchmen does the same thing. He did it in this one with the Vegas, like.
Wait,
the
are you
zombies running
saying
around
that he
Vegas.
directed the original Watchmen film?
Yeah, he did the Watchmen.
I didn't even know that.
The original, not like the DC Watchmen, like with the big blue guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Snyder.
Wild. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So I would suggest watch the first like 10 minutes of the movie because it tells a whole story in that intro credits scene of like setting up what happened in Vegas, and then you can just skip the rest. But the first
It
10
is
minutes
cool.
is worth
Yeah.
worth a watch.
There you go.
That's about it for me.
Hey, you guys, last thing before we move on to the actual movie, I wanted to know, I have not, but I've had a couple other friends who said they've seen it and liked it. Have either of you guys seen Bo Burnham's new special, Inside?
Nope.
No? Okay, well, sorry, viewers. None of us have seen it, but go to other people who have and see if they like it. I've been planning on watching it for a while. I just haven't watched it. I've
Guys,
heard
I'm
it's
just
heard about it
hilarious.
I'm just doing really bad at watching things lately. I'll be honest. I've actually listened to you guys want to hear a wild story about what I've been doing actually instead of watching shows? I've been listening to audiobooks again. Like I've been on a real audiobook kick.
Finished the Hunger Games, or had you already done that?
I finished the Hunger Games in a week. Then I listened to the prequel book in like 3 days. Then
Is that good?
Yeah,
I
wasn't
bought that and I did not listen to it.
no,
I
you
forgot.
got to listen to it. It's really good.
Okay.
Then
That's
after
the one about like the president or something.
yeah,
right?
President Snow. It's like his prequel when he was younger, and it's like the 10th or the 12th Hunger Games. I can't remember. It's really good. Then I listened to Eat a Peach by David Chang, and that was like 9.5 hours. Then I listened to the first Girl with the Dragon Tattoo book. That was 14 hours. Now I'm on the second one, which is like 16 hours. I'm halfway through that. And then I'm listening also at the same time to like a book on urban design and planning and like for cycling. That's how I've been spending my
That's awesome.
time. I just thought I would give a little context to that.
For cycling, like bike.
Yeah, for biking and like
Huh.
building a city based around like green space and allowing people. So like, and this is not to go on like a huge tangent away from our movie watching, right? But most cities are designed for cars. They're not designed for people because American cities are designed for you to hop in your car and get from point A to point B in the fastest possible way.
Right.
But a lot of cities are congested and not actually planned very well at times because they plan a lot of times. Developers come in and say we're going to build this stretch of land and this is how we're going to lay it out, and cities are left to scramble and say, well, we have to do that. And so instead of building it with roads in mind only, why not try and build it from the start with other options in mind, like walking trails, biking trails, like kind of like designing it so you as a person on a bike can feel safe, that you could use an
That's
e-bike.
cool.
So like you could take trips within 15 minutes and get to where you need to on like an e-bike, or like whatever you're gonna do, like.
Huh.
But it's something I'm actually really passionate about. Like it's been my thing for quite some time, and so I just
Casey's going to build his own civilization.
I'm gonna build my own city. It's gonna be called Stinkyville.
It's going to be called No Carsville.
No cars land. No, you should have cars. Like if you choose to live a car life, but you shouldn't have to use it like for everything. Like public
I
transit's great, but bikes are great too.
Yeah.
Yep, true.
But Stinkerville. There you go.
Stinkerville.
But anyhow, let's get into this film. A Quiet Place Part 2.
All right.
John Krasinski's sophomore directorial debut, right?
Sophomore directorial debut.
Second one.
Sophomore film, I guess. His second movie being the sequel to his first movie
Yeah,
that he's directed.
that's
and
all.
he
be
wrote
clear.
this one by himself, right?
If that's what you have on the movie info, I believe
It's
so. I
based
saw
off
he
of
had
the
other
characters
people.
created by these other people, but yes,
But he's the one who wrote this one.
he's the lead.
I actually listened to an interview with him, and he talked about the process of getting this one off the ground. And he actually said he had no intention of coming back for part 2. And so they approached him after the success of the first one, and were like, "Hey, we're gonna do another one. We would love for you to do it." He turned them down, and they're like, "Okay, will you at least like come up with just an idea of where you would take this if you were to do it, and then we'll give it to someone else to direct and make." And he's like, "Yeah, okay." And he sat down and he started writing, and then he found this idea of making the daughter the star of the movie, and then that progressed to another thing. And he said that as soon as he started like getting into it, he's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna do this movie."
He's like, "Oh man, I'm writing it now."
He's like, "I love what I've come up with." He's like, I want her to be the star. I want to do this. I want to do that. I have to do it." So he just like wrote himself back into the thing
There
when
you
he
go.
didn't have any plans on doing it.
I mean,
Side note, part 3 already greenlit.
I saw that.
So we're gonna get another one.
Think he's gonna do that one or no?
I hope so. Because after our conversation last time, I was very skeptical about whether or not a part 2 would cheapen or not the original. And it didn't, surprisingly enough.
I was waiting for like a side swipe, like a total like misdirect there. Like I thought it would cheapen it, and it did. This movie was garbage.
No, I was really impressed with it. I felt like it skirted the line of, I talked a
The
lot about
sequel
like,
line?
oh no, they're gonna like overcompensate in the next one and go full action movie, and they kind of like just towed that line. Definitely more action in this one than the first one, but they weren't like over the top gratuitous, let's save the world with this one. It was still very tight, personal story, and we can get into that in a little bit.
They totally did what I hoped they would. Like they made it big enough, but not
Yeah.
so big that it was like saving the earth.
Mhm.
So yeah, we can get into that when we get to the spoiler section, I guess.
So yeah, so directed and written by John Krasinski, released May 28th, 2021. Budget of $61 million. It has so far grossed, according to IMDb, $176 million. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics have given it 91%, and audience have given it 93%. And IMDb is at a 7.9. Movie is starring pretty much the same cast as the original: Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, Millicent Simmonds, Noah Jupp, and they added Cillian Murphy to the cast.
Murphy.
Killian?
It's
Oh yeah, it is
Murphy.
Killian.
It's
I
Cillian
always
Murphy.
forget, dude.
I do too,
I
because
still
I've
say
been
Cillian.
pronouncing it Cillian for so long.
So I watched the same interview you talked about watching, and he says Killian in it,
Killian.
and so that's
Yeah.
what I'm going with. That's John's law right
and that
there.
is the Irish name. Irish, right?
I mean, that sounds Irish.
Yeah. I
Right.
knew a guy whose son was named Killian. I think that's like the best supervillain name.
Killian?
Killian.
Oh man, dude, I was just thinking about that. I'm like, that's a cool name. Like, I could name my kid that someday. And you're like, super villain. Nope, never mind.
Yeah, so he's from Cork, Ireland, is where he's from. So
Cork.
yeah, so Cork Killian.
He just belongs in these post-apocalyptic zombie-style movies. He was so good in 28 Days Later. He's so good in this.
Well,
I
and
really
even
love
like
that
if you think
actor.
about it, like his character in Dunkirk is kind of like someone who's going through like this trauma as well, and he does so good. And like he's really good in a lot of things. Like I have to take my head off to him. And like he's great in Peaky Blinders. If you haven't watched that, like you gotta watch Peaky Blinders.
Great in Batman.
Sorry, blinders. I keep saying it binders. They're not like whipping you. Like it's binders, binding you down.
Yeah. I was
So-
definitely not like to get into it. I was just, when I saw he was in it, I was like, yes, like an addition that won't be too big, but it's a good addition, not just like some random, not that a random person could have been like bad or good, just like when I saw he was in it, I was like, this makes me want to
You
see
got
it.
the Italian
Even
hand
more.
going on.
Even more than I already did.
Agreed. So you guys already know what I think. I liked it. How'd you guys like the movie?
I loved it. Like I knew we were doing the podcast about it, so this was another reason why I did this, but I definitely did watch this film 2 times in 2 days. The first time I went with my buddy and his wife, and we saw it, and I liked it. And he had some questions. I even had a friend text me with some other questions that I'll bring up later to talk about. But they were good, and I was also like, okay, that's good, but I also want to know more about those questions. And my little brother was wanting to see it, and he hadn't seen it. So we went and we saw it because I was still down there. So, like, I loved it. Like, watching it 2 times in 2 days, like, obviously it was no, like, Avengers Endgame where I watched that movie, like, 4 times in the first 2 weeks that it came out. But, like, it's also different, very different style movie. But also it was, like, obviously it wasn't the best movie that's ever graced planet Earth, but it was definitely, like, the movie that I've been waiting for since last year, you know? And I was satisfied. And there was solid, like, good jump scares that, like, I used to really hate. And jump scares are still jump scares. But, like, I don't know, I walked out of it, like, enjoyed. Like, I had a good time. Like, that was fun, like, with the movie. And they told such a good story. And, I don't know, the rest of it is, like, spoiler talk. So I'll get into it later. So, case.
I like this movie, and I really don't need to say more than that. Like, it was what I wanted in a follow up of this film. There were a couple of things where I was like, how would this work out? But that's all world building, right? And that's all how it happens. And so, yeah, I think I want to go on and get into the spoiler section of this film. You guys ready?
Before we get to that, do you like this one better than the original? The same, or is the original better?
So I think I would go with this one was better for me personally, and I think it's because despite having the small world traveled, and it saw more, because like I don't know how to really get into it without giving any spoilers, which I'm happy to talk about in a minute, but I would say for me this was a better film.
I think I like the first one more. And this is going to sound weird. I think the second one might have had a bit of a better story and kind of plot and everything. But I think the first one, just when it came out, was such an original and amazing idea that it was just such an experience and crazy to go see in the theaters. And this second one was very much the same, you know, where you feel like chewing popcorn too loud. You're like, he's going to get me. But, like, I just remember when that first one came out, it was just such a crazy, original thing that the experience of seeing that first one was just unlike a lot of things that had ever happened in my life. So I think, like, the first one, I don't remember if you guys remember, but it was, like, my number 1 movie of 2018. And obviously there's still a lot of movies to come out this year. I don't think this movie will end up at the top of my list this year probably, but, like, it'll still be one of the best ones for sure. So I think I like the first one a bit more, but it's very close. I'll just say that.
I just have to say, I get Bunch of Crunch when I go to the movie theater.
What does that mean?
Do you guys
What?
not know what Bunch of Crunches are? So, oh my gosh.
I'm not much of a. If I don't get popcorn, I don't get anything at the theater.
I'm really sad
Oh
right
wait,
now.
is this a food?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a snack that you get
I
at the
was
start of
thinking,
the.
like-
So you know a Crunch Bar, right?
Yeah.
Imagine like
Oh, I
the
know what you're
Crunch
talking
Bar
about.
chocolate chips are just like gloppy, and you got the
Okay.
crunchiness. But I like the frozen ones, just so you guys know they're the best. But like I have to like shuffle them down my throat during the previews because I was like, these are too loud for that movie. So just had
I
to bring
literally
that up.
called Crunch, and Casey's like, "Oh man, this was a bad idea." I don't know what I thought when you said I get Bunch of Crunch when I go to the movies, and I was like thinking like,
Like
like
snacky
some-
or-
well, I wasn't even thinking of like a food. I don't know what I was thinking of. I was thinking of like, is that like something that happens to your knees or something? like,
I'm like popping my ankles in the middle of the air.
was
I got
just
Bunch of Crunch, everyone.
I
Here,
was so
listen. No,
confused.
it's a
I'm
snack.
sorry.
I promise.
okay.
That was wild. That was a very wild tangent right there. Like, if you folks if you know what a Bunch of Crunch is, Please let me know.
I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
want to be
lie.
alone in this.
I might throw that up like on our Instagram story. Just like, do you know what Bunch of Crunch is?
I will
Like,
make you
yes,
the graphic
no.
and you can post it. Okay. Okay.
Because we'll see. Because here we've already got 2-1, like people who didn't know what Bunch of Crunch was.
Yeah.
So
Like, do you guys know what happiness is? Like, that's what I'm wondering right now.
I guess we'll find out.
I'm sorry.
All right.
What about you, Vince? Did you like it more
Oh.
than the first one?
No, I like the first one better. I felt like the first one I got more emotional and connected to the characters than I did in this one. I mean, it's valid that I was already connected to the characters when the second one started because of the first one, but I just loved how tight and condensed that original one is, telling the story about just this family. Doesn't do any world building, like you said. This movie does so much better when it comes to expanding this universe, expanding like what these monsters are, where they came from, what happened to the world, all that kind of stuff. First one didn't care about any of that. It's just like, this is a story about a family, and they just happen to be in this post-apocalyptic alien world, and tragedy strikes. And it's just like what happens to that family, and the way that they make you connect to that family so quickly. I never wanted a sequel to it because I thought it was so like perfectly done and left with such like an open ending that you could interpret however you wanted, but it didn't need an answer. So that's why I was so skeptical about the second one, because I didn't feel like it just felt just so well done. I was so scared that it could be ruined. But like I said, I loved this one. Like it was really, really good, really fun. Didn't have as many quiet moments, I don't think, as the original did, where you couldn't eat your popcorn or whatever, you know. But it did have those moments. Before we get into the spoilers, I have one last question.
Okay.
How was the audience for you guys? Because where I saw it in my hometown, it was the night of, I'm pretty sure, graduation. So, or like the day after. So a lot of high school kids were there. And I was so impressed with how quiet they were during this movie. We sat down and we looked
Was not
around and it was like,
expecting that.
great. The first time back in the theaters, packed theater, you know. They're all going to be loud talking and snickering. And no, they were a fantastic audience to see it with. And I was really, really impressed with those kids.
I don't know. I think mine was good as well because I didn't even notice anything, you know? Like, really the only thing, and like sorry, Jerem, if you're listening to this, the only thing that, like, I noticed and, like, partially annoyed me was, like, during one of those very quiet moments, like, my buddy was just chewing on some, like, taffy or, like, something next to me, and I was hearing it, and I was like, shut up. Like, that was, like, the only thing that I could think of from the entire, like, thing that I wasn't just, like, focused straight on the movie. But I love you, Jerem. You're fine. Eat your taffy.
I can't tell you if they were noisy. The monsters came and got them, so it was great. No, I'm kidding. The audience was fine.
Are you guys cool? Can we go into spoilers territories now? Was that the last question?
Yep, that's all I got.
You
Sorry.
you mentioned the monsters. That was the
Spoilers.
first
Spoilers.
spoilers. The first thing I wanted to talk about is obviously we learn a lot more and we see a lot more of the monsters in these ones. I just wanted to talk about how absolutely how to describe this, efficient and ruthless these things are. Like, you see these monsters in full-blown attack mode, and even though they'll still whip across the screen pretty fast, you see them just slice and dice their way through stuff as they're, like, rolling through the city or the country or wherever they're going. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I agree with you. I love the first story for, like, how, like, kind of ambiguous and, like, kind of how a lot of the details were left out so we could focus on the story of the family. And in growing a bit, this was definitely one of the things I was most interested about, is these monsters and, you know, where kind of they came from and exactly what they do and how they work. These things that was like one of my favorite parts of the movie. Like, this sounds awful, but just like watching how ruthless these were, just slicing through people like crazy. Like on the island scene at the end, when you see it running and just completely demolishing people, like, I was like, oh my God, like, this is crazy. I love it, you know? So, like, I was wondering what your opinion was about what we learned about the monsters and just, like, kind of your opinion about them in general.
Do they eat the people they kill, or do they just kill them?
I don't know.
I don't think
That's one of my questions.
So they arrived on a meteor?
They arrived on multiple meteors.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you guys got from it too, because I've heard some people say that it was like a spaceship or something, and I'm like, I don't think that these things are intelligent. Like, I'm pretty sure these are space monsters that hitched a ride on an asteroid that just happened to land on Earth. Am I in the wrong here?
I mean, they can't even swim.
They can't swim.
Well,
they don't
that's
seem
what
to
I'm
be able to
confused
think.
about.
They
Another
just-
question I have. In the first one, doesn't the monster swim under...
I don't think it swims because I don't think it's very shallow.
Yeah.
So I think it just went under.
It's like crawling.
It
Yeah.
low key. I know what you're saying though, because I
Yeah,
like
I get what you're
it.
saying,
Kind
too.
of looked like it was swimming because it moved pretty nice under that water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably just because it could feel the ground. Because that
kinda,
one
like,
monster, when
scoot.
it fell in the
I mean, have
ocean
you
or
ever
whatever, it
like
was
used the
freaking.
shallows of the pool to like use your fingers to crawl you around? So like,
I
That's
used
what
to-
he's doing under the
I used
water,
to do
just
that
got his
in, like,
claws.
remember, you know those like summer pools that you get when you're a kid that are like a foot tall?
yeah.
That's how we used to swim around. We just go in circles over and over on the tips of our
I'm glad that we have that vision now of the monster just like using its little
Using
like
its
sharp
claws
claws. Like,
to just
no,
push
those
him
things
around.
are ruthless though. Like you're right. Like so when it lands, right? Like when we see them going through the town, right? Like John Krasinski being the man going through town and going to the baseball game. We see those things like popping through and like, you know, taking names and taking lives. You know, it's like, whoo, it's terrifying. Like I keep my phone on vibrate for a reason, so I can throw it away a lot easier than panic and was like, ah.
Yeah, I liked these aliens. Just this whole idea of just like this. I keep going back to the Alien franchise in these conversations because
That's
it reminds me so much of it. It's just the perfect destruction, the perfect tool for destruction. You know, like they show up, they hear something, and they don't even think about it. They're just there to
Just kill
kill
it.
whatever they hear. And it makes me wonder, like, how do they not recognize the other alien?
I was
they can't
just
hear
thinking about
anything,
that.
and they just hear noises and attack. Like, they have to have some way that they can recognize that their buddies are there. And
Maybe
not to
since
attack their
they can
buddies.
hear so well, and a lot of times they'll do that thing where it zooms up on their ears when they're doing like the echolocation thing, just like with the
Oh.
little creaks. Maybe like
Sonar or something.
maybe that's like something that you can hear pretty easily from creature to creature. And because I think that this like sonar thing is not only is it just like they hear and they can attack, it has to like, especially since they don't see anything, like in their brain create some sort of image of like their surroundings. I'm not talking about like a physical like image, just like, you know, like when you think about like it creates a sort of thing like that where like, I'm not saying it's bouncing off stuff, but just like when you hear the sounds, it kind of like maps out. Like even just like if you think like of like a thermal thing, like where there's different spots. Like the louder something is, it just like pops up
Makes
brighter.
sense.
Like that's like kind of like how I'm imagining it. And so maybe like that thing like is just registered so many times in their brain that when they hear that, it's just an immediate like creature there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'll buy that.
Well, and maybe it's just more like attack. Like it's just attack. Like there's something.
Maybe they do just attack each other. And we just never seen it.
Well, and that's the thing though is I think that like because they have their own sounds that are coming out. Like the sounds like when they're focusing.
Yeah.
I bet like they have their own.
Some way to communicate.
Yeah.
Their own. Oh, hey George. Like, oh, what's up?
Yeah.
I don't think. I guess I said maybe they attack each other. I don't think they would because otherwise those meteors like
Yeah,
you'd only have like
each other in
one
the meteor.
monster show up on the planet if they were attacking
Well,
each
and
other.
They might be territorial in a way too. Like once they kind of get settled in, and like have like distinct places they want to go, they mark their territory somehow. Maybe it's like maybe after they kill someone, they like spit on it or something. I don't know. Like
Yeah. What a way to introduce the movie, though. Going from the first one where you barely even see the monsters, you know, they kind of like just kind of swing by to just doing essentially a one-shot intro. There's one cut. I watched that YouTube video too where
Yeah,
they
the-
showed how they shot
the
that.
cut is when the police car flips, right?
Yeah. And
and when it flips or when the police car gets there.
it's when
'Cause
he
he
gets
goes
out of the truck
truck.
and walks over, and then the monster shows up and flips the
That's
car.
really sad because it was very obvious. I was like, I don't want to be like, cause I don't know how to make a one-shot film, but I was like, if you just like worked on that just like a little more, like
Yeah.
it could have looked so good, you know?
I thought it looked good though, with even like as abrupt of a cut, because like what he describes in this film, this YouTube video you're talking about, he actually says they wanted it to be noticeable that it was changing. Like he talks about
I
it.
didn't know that.
So he's like, I wanted you to be aware that like something was different. And that's kind of what he says. So
there you go.
maybe he set it up by design, or maybe that was an excuse for a shitty edit. I don't know. Like,
Well, he also said that they couldn't, because they were flipping a car is the reason they had to do it. Because like they had to like make sure safety and everything. I can't remember all the details, but
that makes sense.
well,
But
people
what
have to
an
be like
intro,
10
like-
feet back or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, just going from, you know, this really intense action moment in the first one, and then you just like get full on at the beginning of the next one. Just the most crazy downtown movie sequence that I've seen in
I
a
mean,
while,
because
like,
it's
so-
day one, you know, so everybody in the world still exists. No one knows how the monsters work or that they're even going to be there 2 minutes ago, you know, and then just, so this creature, you know, even now, like, you know, in the first one, little boy has a rocket ship, monster hears it from wherever, just come slices, you know. But like in the first one, there's freaking like 1,000 something people or whatever just in this town. So he's just having a field day,
the
you know, he's
monster's
just
having
going.
the time of his life.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I also agree, super intense. I think it was cool because a lot of the fans, you know, like oh, John Krasinski, blah blah blah, and like I love John Krasinski and he directed it, and so I still think he did an amazing job. But like I'm glad that they didn't like lean too heavily on like him being in the movie, and then it really did end up being Emily Blunt and Millicent Simmonds like movie, you know. But I thought it was cool to still have him like in that beginning part. Where one of the questions where I don't remember if it was Jerem or if it was another friend who I had, the questions that they had was like, was there a reason that that sort of went like unresolved, if that makes sense? Like, because that beginning sequence, it kind of ends with them, what's her name, and her two boys are behind the police car, and they see John Krasinski and
He pulls him over.
Millicent Simmonds like running towards them, but then the monster kind of shows up in between, and then it cuts to like the title sequence, and we never get anything else. So just kind of like I didn't really think about it because it wasn't as important to the story as much as just like sort of introducing and showing that. But I was like, yeah, that was kind of left like unresolved as to how they got out of that.
Well,
mess.
that's where the police officer shoots the shotgun at the monster, and he comes at them, and then they're out, and they probably snuck away, I would assume. Jason
I just thought
after
he
the
just
other
killed the police officer, though, didn't he?
I can't remember.
And he didn't, and the police officer
I'm
didn't get
kind
the
of like
thing.
you. I'm kind of like you, where I was just like, I know where they end up, so it's not that important.
True.
How? It's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, but I
did it.
just
It's
yeah,
like,
I didn't think about it. But then I was
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh
just
yeah, huh? Like
cool.
I don't think it's as important to the storyline. I'm sorry, Jerem.
No, like it was. That was
No.
my thing. Is I didn't come with that question, but like someone did, and I was like, huh, like yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
What did you guys think about the use of sign language early on in that prequel too? Like explaining kind of like that the family was already using it regularly. Like, what did you think about that? Also, the kid had aged like a whole 4 years, so there's
I
that
know,
too.
he was a little-
this kid's like in Little League, but he's looking like he's 16 or something like that. So
He's
I know.
already got chest hair, armpit hair, and a full beard.
I thought it was good. Just kind of like because I think it was what a lot of people had already sort of assumed was like this family already spoke sign language, which is kind of how they got to where they were, was that they could use that. So just kind of showing that as
It
well.
also had some like setup for later in the movie where she teaches him the sign language for dive, and he tells her to dive into the water at the end of the
yeah,
movie.
that was cool.
Okay, one quick thing really fast. How the heck do you turn Cillian Murphy, like the most British dude ever, into like a guy who works in a steel warehouse? Like he
I
like
bought it, man.
you just
I
put
bought
put
it.
on boots, some Wranglers, like a
Grow a
A
beard.
freaking
baseball cap,
baseball cap, and
a
a
big bushy
You're
beard.
American.
a flannel shirt. And you're about American as they come. People probably gotta be woohoo, and some of them I don't know.
Put him next to a baseball field.
There
Yeah,
you go.
that's-
exactly.
That's
He's
about the
listening.
most American.
He's
thing I've
listening
ever
to the
seen.
Red Sox game.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I think I love that aspect of it, the sign language and the fact that she's deaf and everything. I think that makes it just such a, I don't know, it just all works so well together. And I loved the moments between Millicent and Cillian Murphy, and him just trying to like communicate with her, but he gets so frustrated, and she just has to be like, slow
Calm.
down, enunciate. Like, she's not dumb. She just needs you to look at her and talk slow and enunciate, and we can have a conversation. You know, those moments between him and her I thought were really, really good. good.
Yeah.
I was kind of confused with what the relationship between him and John Krasinski's character was, though. Are they just buddies?
Buds.
They
Yeah, I
weren't
think-
like family or anything, right?
I don't think so. Just
And
people who knew each other.
What's John Krasinski's character's role in town? Did it really explain that? Because everyone seemed to really like him and
He
respect
seems like a
him.
mechanic because he showed up with like greasy hands.
That is true.
Just
I didn't
everyone
think
just
about
kinda-
that. I didn't think about the greasy hands because he did have the gross hands, but I didn't know.
It's just
anything.
not another thing not important to the story. Just like
Just
it just was interesting because like the cop like knew him, Cillian knew him, and like
The guy at
really
the store.
respects him. Like he just seemed like
yeah.
I mean you can just tell he's a good dude, and it's a small town, and everyone
Yeah.
knows everyone.
I was gonna say that. It's like also it could just like obviously you guys are more from smaller-ish towns than I am, but it seemed like a small enough town where like I'm sure everyone doesn't love everyone, but like
The good guy.
the guy is like, hey man, I gotta get to the game, and the guy's like, yeah, you'll pay me back, like already
Yeah,
knows it
okay.
and stuff, So just like kind of like it just kind of had like that small town vibe to me, where
Yeah.
it's just like everyone knows each other, and
It's one of the things I love the most about this movie is just the small town vibe. Like I know
Yeah.
that it doesn't take place in like the Midwest or whatever, or like
it's in New
center
York.
of the country. It's over by New York, but it really just has that small town feel to it all, and I absolutely love that about the movie.
Same,
Yeah.
100%. I felt the same way. So just
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to throw that out there. That's good.
Yeah.
What did you guys also think about like? So the bear trap.
Ah, dude.
Still, for some reason, still not as bad as the nail.
I
Yeah.
I would agree with you, and that's what's weird is because here's where I think it differentiates is because a bear trap is typically for animals, and we don't really think about that. But a nail going through your foot, like how does that make you feel when I say that? Like the nail piercing through and just sliding up, like doesn't that make you feel like?
I totally agree. But also, the worst part about the nail is it's coming way before she actually steps on it, and you're just waiting for that moment.
Because it's gonna happen.
The bear trap, you didn't know that was going to happen. So when it happens, it's just like, holy crap.
So-
but you don't have that big buildup of just like, no, please, I don't want to see it,
So what I weirdly expected was like this sounds much worse, and I'm sorry that my mind went here. I was expecting like a ton of like broken glass or something to like deter something, like that was in my mind. But it like wouldn't matter for like the monsters because they're like still plated feet, right? But like for me, like in my mind, I was like the glass. But yeah,
I don't know. Something for me about like I totally understand what you said, Vince, about like that build up where you're just waiting and it's gonna happen. Like they're not even trying to hide it at all. The camera literally pans to the nail before she steps on it, right? And especially with her like being pregnant and everything that's going on with that, it's just such a huge, crazy part of the story. I think that the bear trap, just the element of surprise that came with it, it was just one of those audible gasp things in the theater because they're running and the creature's chasing them and Cillian Murphy's got his gun pointed at him, but they don't know that, right? But there's just so many different things already going on and it's already intense. And then all of a sudden, bro's in a bear trap. Like it was just one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, that's so painful. And you just weren't expecting it at all, where I was just like, oh my gosh. Like just one of the craziest parts of the movie, like not expecting it. I think I like the bear trap a little more than the nail, but those are another things like the movies where it's just like two very similar moments, but like both very impactful, I guess is what I'd say. So I don't know.
well, also like I can't imagine like the pain he was experiencing to scream that loud, especially with his paranoid as that kid was, and like his anxiety with all
true.
this. So like he was like screaming, and that like I was like, they're dead. Like that's why Cillian Murphy's in this film is because they're dead. They don't make it any longer. But what a wild that part I just had to bring up, and what a like I don't know. I also have one more question about another part of this was the intro to Cillian. Like after we haven't seen him for a while, the mask, the hair down, like the hat on, like trying to play off who he is. Like what did you guys think about that like part where it's like their real first contact with someone?
I love to see how people are surviving in this world. The farm that they establish in the first one was such a cool, like, unique place, using the lights as like a warning system. They had a food source. Killian's place where he is is like the opposite. And of course, he went up there because he didn't really have a choice at a certain point, right? But I love that introduction of just like he has to rush them down into his little hidey hole, into this little like, what is that thing? Like this little
I
like
think it's a furnace.
furnace where like they can't get air or anything because it's like the only safe place that you can get to where you're guaranteed to not be heard. I just thought it was really, really cool. And then just his introduction and just another person in this world, this post-apocalyptic world that has just lost everything. Just everyone seems to lose everything. And then you get the island at the end, which is the exact opposite of everything you've seen in this movie. You know, you had your little, the farm was their little like sanctuary in the first one, but this one you don't have a sanctuary, right? Oh, that's not true. The hidey hole is a sanctuary, but it's like not great. And then it's just like the difference between how they were living and how these people on this island were living was just like so interesting and cool. And they've been there for so long and they're so happy, and it's just like this commune and everything's good, versus Cillian and everyone else who's just like lost his kid, lost his wife, just doesn't care anymore, feels like he didn't do enough, just lost in this world, doesn't know what to do. I don't know, it's really cool.
Yeah. I have a couple questions. So I put out a tweet a little while ago, maybe asking people to DM if they had any questions about some stuff, and I have a couple from a couple people. They're just like about the movie. So first one is from my buddy Daryl. He had a couple questions. His first one that he talked about was about Aaron, which is Cillian Murphy's character's name, which I keep forgetting, which is why we keep calling him Cillian. He said, if Aaron's wife died more recently, why does she look like she's been there a long time? Like, just like the plant workers.
Sorry, its name's actually Emmett, I'm pretty sure.
Is it Emmett? Oh. He put Aaron in his message to me, so. Huh. Okay. I think he's still talking about Cillian Murphy's character, though, because he said if his wife died more recently, which is who we're talking about, right? He said, why does she look just like the plant workers that appear to have been hung there a while ago? Because, like, I also kind of thought the thing, because he said that his wife died, like,
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he said something like that, right?
Those plant workers look like they were just folded up clothes, like floating there.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They weren't actually bodies. They were.
Okay,
they were. I'm feeling like, so. What I'm curious, and I actually put a lot of thought into this, and I haven't looked it up in research. I've just formulated my own theory on this. I think that the wife, after losing the child, had a terrible mental break and was like very upset, and maybe she was already sick with some sort of sickness beforehand, like maybe she had cancer, maybe she had something where she couldn't get medicine, right? And so I think that they tried to create some sort of normalcy with putting up the costumes of these workers. Like those aren't actual people as far as I know, unless we find something that conflicts.
No, my guess is it's more of a Home Alone type situation, where if he has people that come across his little sanctuary, they're going to look up into that building and see a whole bunch of silhouettes and think, oh, there's a bunch of people here, we shouldn't mess, and not know that it's just him and his sick wife. That would be my guess.
That makes sense.
Because I'm with you guys. I'm pretty sure those were just like clothes hung up to throw people off.
Okay. But then also, just to go off the other part of the question, that his wife or whatever that was there in the bed when the boy finds it looked like she had been decaying for a long time. Am I crazy, or?
She's pretty gross.
Like, I'm not good. Like, I can't tell you, oh, the stages of cellular decomposition in humans are like this. But, like, I thought the same thing. I was like, yeah, she does not look like she's only been dead for a few weeks or something. So I guess maybe that's just a go unanswered sort of question. Unless you have.
Yeah, I don't know. Really, like, maybe there's some toxicity from the factory. Maybe. Or, because, like, I don't know, like, that kind of stuff. Like, that's, but
it's not
also
stored in any sort of cold place.
Huh?
It's not, the body's not stored in any sort of cold place.
Yeah,
so
I think it might have been
rapidly.
Open air as well, like, to where maybe, like, if there are birds left and stuff like that, like, could have come and been chewing on it, like.
True.
All sorts of things. I don't know. I'm not a criminal investigator, so I can't be like, this is how the body decomposes. But
yeah.
That's a good question, though. That's a really good question.
Yeah. This one I had not thought about at all, but I guess was like smart or just interesting, and one that I hadn't thought about. He said, "Do you think that he, Cillian Murphy's character, was intending to eat intruders? Is that why he had a rifle trained on them?" Because at first I was like, "Oh, probably just for defense against the creatures." And while I did think that as well, I was like, he did also later say like, "I've never seen one of them dead before," so he probably knows that him shooting one won't like do a lot, but also at the same time you want it for self-defense. But what do you think about that? Like, do you think he had it on them because he was gonna eat intruders, or like what?
No.
No, I don't think it was any cannibalism. I mean, he knows that people out there, he tells them, like,
Oh,
the
true.
people that are alive aren't the people you want to save. They're not the people you want to help. He's got the trap out front with the bottles that make a noise or whatever that they trip to. Again, I think he just has this place rigged up like a freaking Home Alone house where he doesn't want regular people to come in and find them, and he has the gun on them because he's ready to kill them, because no one that he knows outside of the house or outside of the compound is worth his time, that they're just going to take his stuff, hurt him, take his food, his water, whatever, and he doesn't want anybody there. And so I think he's just like ready to kill them, whoever.
Well, they would come
are.
in and take over like his spot because it's such a good spot. Like
Yeah,
if
it's
you really think about
genius.
it, and I think also like you nailed it on the head. Like, and we later see this down at the docks, what mankind has become, and like I think more or less he was just doing it like Vince. I love that Home Alone idea thing where he just wants to make sure people aren't coming, people aren't messing, and that he can be safe. But I think he's also prepared to fight for what's his. And I think the reality is too is like if you shoot a gun, but you're in a big enough place, like I don't think they're gonna be able to pinpoint it if you're quiet if they're not right there. Like I think they're gonna have to figure it out.
And he
And
could rush down into his hidey hole.
yeah, and with boots on, that was a quiet guy too. That bothered me actually. I'm not gonna lie. I was so irritated that like
I was like,
he-
why is she still not wearing shoes?
yeah, I was like, but I don't know. Like that flustered me.
So
Good question.
yeah, kind of crazy question. This was one that I had seen and thought about it for a while, but then I like figured out an answer, even though it's not like the best answer. Okay, so he said, "What was the brother? What's his name?" I feel bad because I don't know the actor's name and I don't know the character's name. So
I've got it.
Vince will look that
Sorry,
up
hold
while I finish reading the question. What was the brother hoping to accomplish by exploring the factory? And this was a question that I saw not only from him, from tons of people on Twitter and Instagram have mentioned this. And when I watched it the second time, I found the answer. And like, even though it is the answer to this question, it's like, okay, well, he was still being stupid. It's like the answer to the question. He was looking for his mom coming back because when he goes up there, before he even really like goes and sees the body and trips over stuff, he like looks out the window and he's like, I think he even has like some binoculars, maybe I'm crazy, but like he looks out the window and he's like looking for his mom to come back, right? And so that's like the answer, but it's also like him going around the factory when he's told not to, and with all the stuff that he doesn't know, like is a stupid thing to do.
Well, he's just curious, and he has such hate. Like we can go back to his anxiety. Is there a real thing? Like, think about it. He hasn't really been separated from either one of his parents for a long time,
True.
and like even before like all this happened, I think that's what the prequel does a good job of setting it up. Is like he has nerves, he has problems, and like where the mom is telling him to calm down and all of that, right? Like, I think that's a great question though. Like, I also think that he's just curious. Like he like after he going out to the river with his dad in the movie before, like just this is a couple of days before. Like we have to remember, like this isn't a long time before. Like or is it quite a ways? I can't remember. It's not that
No,
long.
it's like it picks up right where the first
It's
one
the
left
day
off.
Yeah,
after.
it's the day
right?
after, right? Like I was like, it's not very far behind. His dad has given him like the desire to be curious again. I think after going to the waterfall, like even though he saw things and like his dad died, I think like his mind is also being like there are things to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, in the first one, his mom basically sits him down and says, "You need to go with your dad, and you need to learn how to protect me." As I'm pretty sure what she says, like you
When
need
I'm
you need to
old.
learn how to protect me when I get old. And so I think you're right. I think he saw the death of his dad, and he's just like, I need to. I mean, that's what his whole arc is in this movie. Is learning how to protect himself and not be this scared little boy anymore.
Yeah.
His name's Marcus, by the way.
Marcus.
Marcus. Lee Abbott. Marcus Abbott.
True. Kind of leads me to one of my only nitpicks of the movie. Obviously, they're in a very tough situation. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on. The baby is still literally days, hours old and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. Their dad/husband just died, like, the night before most of this stuff all goes down, right? And even though they do touch/talk about it a little bit, I know, especially with John Krasinski not wanting to, have his character be too much in the movie, I know they don't want to dwell on it too much, but, I found it, afterwards, thinking about it, I found that, I don't know, they weren't, acting, I guess, or, even, thinking about him, hardly at all, with all this other stuff. Obviously, they're still wanting to help and do what they can, and the kid got his foot stuck in a bear trap, but, this chick's I'm going to go to this radio station and save the world and all this other stuff. And she's, trying to, do and be what her dad would, want her to be. But I don't know, just, that was, one of my only nitpicks was I was okay, their dad just died yesterday, and they're just, still going around, their post-apocalyptic world, kind of in the same way.
With no mourning time at all.
Kind of, yeah. I don't know, did you guys feel the same way? Did you think about that or not really?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you feel kind of the same or...
I tend to disagree with you just a little bit.
That's fine.
And it's not because I'm oh man, wouldn't you be running type thing, right? I think that for some folks, and this is just a thought and a theory, right, you see mom go back and put her ring down on the cross,
right,
and more in there, but you see her talking with Emmett the whole, the girl talking with Emmett the entire time about making him proud, you wouldn't be the man he wanted to be. She's taking her grief out on him, is the way I'm seeing it. And what the boy is doing, sorry, I just forgot the kid's name now. Marcus. His is, I think, so I had a friend who lost his dad in high school. We were 16, 17-ish, and what was really interesting is I was weirded out by the way my friend grieved, and he just went skateboarding every day. He just kind of he was out of school for 2 weeks and he just went skateboarding every day, and he just wasn't at home. He was just running around doing stuff all the time. And I was if I were in your shoes, I would be crying, sitting home and just crying. And essentially he was well, this is how I'm grieving, because my dad knew I loved skateboarding and I'm out here just doing what my dad knew I loved. And I was that's interesting. But I can see where you're coming from with they're not grieving in the way that they're sitting around and it's not wrong to sit around, right? But they're sitting in a group crying and reminiscing. I just don't feel they feel they have the time for that, maybe. And I don't know, right? But that's kind of my thought.
Yeah, it's kind of this is a world that they've experienced a lot of loss. The majority of the population is dead. All their family, everyone's dead.
Well, they've already lost the little baby boy,
lost a son.
But also I think her driving passion was my dad died to give me this sound, right? And now here I am, trying to do stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe
I
that's it.
You. It's hard to find time to grieve when you're in a world of constant tragedy.
Yeah, and you're
constantly losing things.
And the whole big thing about the first one was when everyone found out she was pregnant, oh my goodness, that's so crazy. How are you gonna do that? This baby is still 1 day, 2 days old. And you got to figure out how that's going to happen.
And she freaking risks her life to go back and get more air tanks and medicine and stuff like that. I was how far away is this,
this town?
This grocery store from the plant?
So
also,
why
how's
did
that
they
going to
leave
keep
the
happening?
farm in the first place, though? They killed the 3 monsters that were there.
Okay.
Why did they leave to go and...
Did they, though?
Did they kill him?
This was another question that someone had, and I also had even before this person messaged me.
They did. The other bodies are down there in the thing.
You only see one. And from all we know, that could have been the one that they killed
in the first.
Because it was on the stairs.
It's in a different place. The bodies are in different places.
You sure?
I'll look it up.
Because that was my question was the first one ends... They shoot a shotgun, which is crazy loud, right? Kill the one. it shows like 3 or 2 other
There's two of 'em
ones,
running.
2 of them running towards them.
And there's also a board in that room that says there's 3 in the area.
Right, true. 3 confirmed in the area, which I don't know, like, just because they went up to this place or whatever, but there's more now. So it shows, like, 2 more running towards them. She cocks the gun. The first movie ends. The second movie starts with the day 1 intro, and then it goes to them. And it just, like, I don't doubt that they could have, probably, especially since she has the amplifier and her hearing aid, but it just never goes over that, and it doesn't explicitly show anything like that, unless you found anything.
Okay, well then if the monsters are still there, I just assumed, because the way that I read the ending of the first movie before this one came out was that they're ready to fight back, they're going to kill these 2
Right.
monsters. So I just assumed those monsters were dead, and if that was the case, I was just like, you got a good setup here. Why are you leaving this place? Like, don't go try to save the world. Keep your family safe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Stay there.
And I also, it wasn't until now that I realized that I misunderstood the first one with the baby. I thought that the tank they had was some sort of, like, anesthesia or something to, like, put the baby to sleep if it was crying. I didn't know it was so they could close the box and it was oxygen to keep the baby oxygenated. I thought it was like anesthesia. So, like, I didn't even know that I, like, misread that until we got to this one where it's very obvious that it's
I can't find
oxygen.
anything to confirm that they killed the other 2 monsters, but I like feel like it's a guarantee that they did.
I would agree with you that I think it leans, like, towards that. I would just, like, thought about it like it didn't, like, maybe it's just like they were just like, do we need to do that? It's gonna cost however much more for CGI and stuff, where we can just be like, they did it, okay, like.
Plus, we just had a big action scene right before this.
True.
You don't want to go from one action scene to another.
Yeah.
But I guess they could just show, like you said, a couple of dead monsters there.
Yeah,
But if the
true.
monsters are still there, that's a good reason to leave.
Yeah, that's true.
like,
Maybe
if-
they're just
if
roaming
there's
Well,
about.
and
monsters
maybe
out there
they
running
got in
around.
and saw the body, or like smelt the body, and that like changed their plan. Because like
Yeah,
if one of their own is dying, that probably freaks them out.
Or
I don't
maybe,
again, I just don't think that these monsters are that smart.
or do they have, like, any food and water left? Because their barn thing is burning down, and that's where they did have a lot of their food storage and everything as well.
Well, that's also where they were soundproofed as well.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, because they built that in the first one. Yeah, so that stinks. Their little soundproof place got burned down.
And drown. And
How did it
flooded,
get burned
right?
down? Did
I
that
can't
show it in
remember.
the
The
first one?
electrical, I think, was what it was.
Huh.
They show it getting burned down at the first of the
So
scene.
it just sounds like their little sanctuary was just
Oh,
going to hell.
There
so
was
they're just like,
candles.
Get out of here.
There was candles after she had the baby. Remember?
Oh,
That's where it was. There was candles. It's not electrical. Sorry.
Dang candles.
Yeah. Don't leave your candles on in your
Destroying
bathtub
the
when you fall asleep.
world.
You might burn your hair and your
I mean,
house down.
it's all for the greater good, right? Millicent Simmonds is there saving the world now. So,
So where do you guys think the third one will go?
I don't know. This one might, like, they've already proved me wrong once with the second one, but I feel like this one could, like, get too big, you know? Because, like, what has she done? She's made this radio frequency, which anyone within X certain or whatever can use to turn on and, I mean, have whatever to be able to stun or, like, stop the monsters temporarily so you can, like, get them. And so, like, that's, like, what I feel like. Obviously, like, she needs to get back to her family, right, and stuff. But then it's like, okay, where does it go from here? What else they're going to do? Like, stopping all the monsters? And, like, it feels like I'm hoping that it would stay in, like, a more small-scale experience. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like the natural flow of a story, like, can do that now,
So
you know?
I have an idea, but I'm curious if it's like rooted in realism, right? So how did these
We
monsters
go to space,
Well,
to
no, no,
their
no, no.
planet.
This isn't Fast 9. We're not going to space. This isn't Vin Diesel. So angry about it.
need to take our cars to outer space.
You also sound like Sylvester Stallone after getting hit in the face by what's his bucket, the Russian. No, but like I have an idea here, and I'm curious. So, right, these monsters can't swim. There are hundreds of thousands of islands around the Earth, right? how do we know that, like, for instance, like the Philippines is fine, or like Australia isn't fine, or like one of these places? I'm just curious if they find a way to connect with maybe the greater populations that are remaining somehow, or find a way to connect to the internet. I don't know. I'm not like here, but like find out like, is there some sort of like, you remember World War Z, how they like build the walls around Jerusalem or whatever?
Right.
Like, I'm wondering if there's like a way they can extend out the signal to where they could like put up some walls and like kind of reclaim the land in a way. I don't know.
Well,
I
like
don't want it to be weird or crazy, but
Another callback to 28 Days Later. I don't want to spoil that for everybody.
I've never
Yeah,
watched it, so
I
don't
know you're
spoil it
talking
for me.
about
See
that.
that then.
It's a good one. But like, how are a lot of these like islands like surviving? Because a lot of these islands, like even like Hawaii or other stuff like that, like if they got lucky enough, which it seemed like there probably wasn't too many of these meteors that fell around the world, right? But obviously, if you hit major land masses, first of all, rip to any of the aliens who landed. You know, if we go by probability, 2/3 of them landed in the ocean. So rip to those guys. But like, there's very likely that Hawaii or just like a lot of these places like didn't get hit with those, and then all of a sudden you just hear and see in the news like, oh man, these monsters are killing everybody. Like, a lot of these places are like highly dependent on like outside external sources to get certain resources, right? So you could live for a certain amount of time with the resources they already have on the island, but then it gets to a point where it's like, what do we do? Do we just try to become self-sufficient here on the island? Do we find ways to go and get other resources? And so that like would be interesting to see, but that's also what I'm talking about. Like, that's where we get large scale and maybe deviate a little from the Quiet Place roots.
Do you think it'll be a part 3 and still follow the same family, or do you think it'll go with someone else?
Well, where they left off is like
Good question.
the daughter and the mother and the baby aren't even like together. Like, they're on
Oh,
an
yeah, right.
island, and
She's got to go back and get them.
as far as I know, they didn't use the motor on the boat to get out there. So like, how are they gonna get in? And did they go out on the tide type thing? Like, how did this work? Is my question, right? Yeah, they got to go back in, but then there are like those people, like the mer people, who are like hunting people at the harbor, and like,
What's up with those guys? Like, I know that they were weird and stuff, but also like, they were. How did they last this long? They were stupid. What was that?
remember, like, kind of like the rule with the water. If there are waves, they probably could be a little bit noisier because of the sound of the water.
I guess, but just like how fast they died, like in this one, like obviously they're not the first people that they've like robbed and stuff. Like, how do these people make it this long?
Dude,
I don't
luck.
know.
Yeah, sheer dumb luck.
Probably, I guess. That girl was creepy though.
The little
That was
Like
girl.
when
That
she
was
looked
cool
up
scene.
and she had the crazy eyes. That was kind of insane.
They all got like scurvy or something going on.
that
Maybe
was
they've
kinda
been living on the water.
Maybe
Like, that's probably
They just
straight up.
come
They're
in-
probably living on the boats and then coming in to
come in to
steal
steal
from
stuff.
people and
People like
So they
go
were
back
boats.
out on the
pirates.
boats again. Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
and that would explain like why they're so like sunburned and nasty
Yeah.
and zombie looking, because they're just like
True.
living out at sea and not getting enough oranges.
Yeah, there you go.
God, the oranges! I think I'm getting a scurvy coming on.
I couldn't let this podcast go without asking each of you guys what your favorite parts of this movie was. And I'll go first, let you guys have a little bit of time to think about it. I absolutely loved the end. So, obviously, so much goes on with the family. And
That good of a film, huh? You just love the
I
end.
lo- I
when
just
it's
it
over.
was so
I'm
I
sorry.
just loved it was done. Okay, I just loved like where the characters have moved and what they've become during this. And even though this is like the day after the thing with their dad happens, obviously the actors have grown quite a bit, and so it feels like they're a lot older. And so I just love the scene at the end where she does the thing in the radio station and she walks towards him and he does it with the thing, and there's so many good parallels in this movie, and this was the greatest of them all. The first one obviously shows the mom on the bridge walking, and then the second one it shows Cillian Murphy and Millicent Simmonds on the other bridge walking. They do a lot of things like that throughout the movie where there's parallel scenes going on in different places, right? This was my favorite one, and it's very obvious that it's like a parallel, right? Because it's both of them walking towards these monsters that they have like defeated with the kids like knowledge and what they've like come up with and what they're doing. It was just a very cool to see like the kids rise up and be like the star, especially Millicent Simmonds of the movie, and not only just to do this thing that's outsmarted them, that they've, shown that like they can do something, that they don't have to be afraid of these monsters anymore, but then just to also like kind of like take back sort of like some of what's there. Is like the kid, like even though he's so shaky, he grabs the gun and he shoots the monster. But even more so, I love Millicent Simmonds just grabbing this shard of chair or whatever it was and just slicing. Just
Cool.
I don't know, that scene with the music that was going, because it had that same like kind of musical theme that they have throughout the movie that's like really quiet with the piano and stuff, that I just love and adore. Right, one of the most underrated parts of the first one, and they use just basically the same in the second one. For me, the ending of this movie just it moved me. I like got the chills. Like I thought it was like I my buddy thought it was kind of cheesy, but I just loved it. I thought that it was great, and it was a great way to wrap up the movie. I thought it was insane.
Yeah. I think I really liked, like you said, that same thing of how everybody has their moment in the movie, and it stitches them all together really, really well. So it's like even Emily Blunt's character has her little hero moment in the rain or in the water when she breaks the pipe and everything. But I still think that my favorite part in this whole one is the intro. I really like that day one
True.
sequence. I thought that was really, really well done and really exciting, and it's the exact opposite of what you expect from A Quiet Place and what I thought that I wanted from A Quiet Place, but worked really, really well for me.
It was very cool. That scene, though, by the way, like where she shoots the oxygen tank, which, number one, it sucks that she has to do that because it's such a huge resource for them. But when it does that and it blows up, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. And then it just walks out, and you're like, what? No!
It
Sorry.
just shows you how crazy those monsters are. Like, they're built to destroy.
They can't swim, though.
And I just love Emily Blunt so much.
She's
I think
so
she's
good.
the best. I think she's like my top 2 or 3 science fiction actresses, up there with like Sigourney Weaver, like Emily
fiction.
Blunt she's just so good in all these, in Looper, in freaking
Live, Die,
Live,
Repeat.
Die, Repeat.
And the other
Digital
one that's a
Whatever
loop.
it's called. Yeah, like she just
Surprise, like that's what's gonna happen in the third one. She wakes up next to freaking John Krasinski, and she'll have to live it over again.
the Angel of Verdun. I think that's what it's called.
That's exactly
Is that
what
what
it
it's
is.
I have no idea.
It
You
is.
said
It is what
Verdun,
it's called.
and I'm
She's the
thinking
Angel of Verdun.
Verdun's like war zones.
It might not be. I might be getting that confused with Warzone.
It's something like that, though.
Yeah. No.
Casey, favorite part?
I love the opening sequence. It was great. It was enjoyable. I really thought that the idea that showing that this was just good humanity beforehand, and then the transformation into rough humanity or like survival humanity. I think that's really interesting. Like, what are people doing in a crisis and how are they reacting? I think that's totally interesting. I also think when they like leave, it's kind of like, like the Shel Silver scene where the sidewalk ends. It's where the sand path ends in this one, and it's like you're totally like stepping on crunchy leaves, and they're getting out there, and like it's new for them. And I think that was something interesting. And then finally, for me, I actually really like Cillian Murphy and his contribution. Like he wasn't the lead. Millicent Simmonds was, for sure, but he was the support we actually needed. Like It's kind of like when you like hit your shin, right? Like you need to like hop around a little bit. He's that other leg we needed to like help make the stride perfect.
They're like, especially because she had just lost her father, and obviously he wasn't meant to be like a father to her, but just to have someone else, like a friend and like a strong figure to be there with her. Them like going off and doing their thing at first during the movie, I was like, what the heck? Like that's kind of weird, but then it ended up being one of like the best parts of the movie, like their relationship and bouncing stuff off each other just with what happened between those two characters was one of my favorite parts of the movie. And I'm not going to say like a whole nother part, but just one that we never mentioned and I thought couldn't go unnoticed was the whole like train sequence when she's like in the train and then sees it and then he comes in. That was just also a very cool scene.
Well, what's wild too, and I had thought about bringing this up earlier, is the part where he like stole the stuff and brought it back to her type thing.
True.
Like that was a wild sequence where it's like you're like, oh crap, she's screwed, and then he's like, you see the boots arriving, you're like, It's
Yeah,
like
that
he's-
was one of the very cool, like quiet scenes
Yeah.
where it went. I always like that
Oh.
when it goes in from her perspective
Yes.
and it goes into that complete silence, right? The real muted, not having a sense of anything, and then with a touch or with something, it pulls you out of it. A very cool editing choice.
Reminds me of a lot of that Sound of Metal movie that just came out, where they actually like recreate what that person is actually, what it would be like to be like that person, how silent it is and everything. One more side note from those YouTube videos that I watched, John Krasinski actually told a story about Millicent Simmonds' mom coming up to him and thanking him for giving her the opportunity to hear what it's like, to hear what the world is like through her daughter's ears in this movie. That really touched him. He like started crying in the movie, in the YouTube video and everything. It's really cool. That's an awesome touch. Something you don't have to do, but switching back and forth to from the silence to the loud is such a cool idea.
And
Just
it's
getting
not even
different
just like,
perspectives.
he's not even just like, hey, we're appealing so you know this thing. Like, he does it, and it's very cool to see that, but also such like a cool, different like choice that just makes it that much further of, even though she has this advantage of doing sign language and different things like that, like there's that scene where like a monster can be right on her and she just got no clue. She's just chilling. So it's just, I don't know, just so much about this whole series. Like, I'm excited for a third one, and I'm like cautiously excited because I'm like, I feel kind of like how you did after the first one, where like it was so good. Like, do we need another one? Like, these two, like, it's turning into something really amazing, but I'm just afraid that there's gonna be the one. You know, like once you keep making movies, there's always gonna be one that can't be good, right? Like, I just get scared about that. Like, to have one that kind of like ruins it, but I also like I do want more though at the same time. So it's a very back and forth.
Yeah.
Well,
sort of
it's just
relationship.
the gamble, right? Like if they can make them successfully and like you keep winning, do it the way you're doing it, keep the formula up, and give it enough twists that it's good. But if you lose, like that's a huge risk to take, especially where you're John Krasinski and you're trying to solidify yourself outside of just being Jim. So it's a hard thing. It's a hard decision, and maybe he knows he'll actually step away from it. And if it flounders, it's not. He can be like, "Oh, it's not my fault." So I don't know. What any last words, guys?
It's an A movie. I won't go like A+ or anything, but it's a solid A. It fulfilled my expectations. It made me happy. It was definitely the movie I was waiting for. If you haven't seen it, especially if you did see the first one and you liked it, go do it. You will enjoy it. You will like it.
It's a much better zombie movie than Army of the Dead.
It's not even about zombies, and Vince is saying that.
Kind of the same idea. This is, I don't know if have either of you guys ever played The Last of Us?
Yes.
This is as close to the Last of Us in movie form as we've ever got, and they did a great job at it. I
There
love
you
the
go.
movie. It was part 1, part 2. Great movies.
I concur. It was great. I loved it. Like I said, I enjoyed it more than the first one, and that's just me. I think they did an effective job at building the world, but not oversharing too much.
I totally understand why you like this one more than the first one.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight on the podcast. I love when we get together. It's fun to get together with your friends, and so also thank you for those people who asked Josh questions. Like, I know I'm saying this at the very end of the podcast, and you might not even make it here, but thank you. Like, legit, like, we love participation, and like it helps us broaden our questions and our thoughts. So thank you. If you want to go ahead and give us a follow on our socials, go ahead and do that. Or if you just want to listen to the podcast and give it a good review, we'll take that too. But
Appreciate it.
whatever you'd like to do, join us again next time on the Pause Around Play podcast, where we talk about movies, we have fun, we enjoy time, and time is good. And I'm rambling onward. So goodbye.